Welcome everybody to our third of three events from the CPA Ontario Centre for Sustainability Reporting and Performance Management. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Nancy Vandenbosch, faculty member here at the school and one of the associate directors for the center. Joined today by someone most of you will know because you're probably in our course, Wenchen Hu. Wenchen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy.
And our special guest today, Una Japundza, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at HeyTaco. Una, thanks for making time for us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Um, so just a reminder of format before we get started to the students. We want to ask as many questions as we can from you. And so please put your questions into the chat and Wenchen will read them off for you. I have lots and lots of questions for Una, and I'm sure Wenchen has as well, but we will defer to student questions as much as we possibly can. So, Una, we want the students a chance to get to know you. And so we have some questions. We're going all the way back to the very start, which is, where were you born and raised?
So I was born and raised in Croatia on the Adriatic coast. So I lived there all the way through high school. And then I decided to come to the United States to play college volleyball. So if you know anything about European education, it's free. And to get a volleyball scholarship was an opportunity just to come to the US and get the education here and experience playing college volleyball. So I finished up in North Carolina and then Pittsburgh for a few years, and that took me through graduate school, and the rest is history. But Croatia, small town on the North Adriatic coast called Rovinj, is where I spent my childhood.
And when you were growing up in Croatia, what did you think you wanted to be other than potentially a professional volleyball player if such a league exists?
It's funny. I never wanted to be a professional
Oh, really?
volleyball.
Okay.
I enjoyed it, but it was more like a means to an end, right?
Ah,
It was like I did it. My whole family is into sports, right? It was really fun. But I never had any delusions. I wasn't that good. I was good enough, but not that good. Oh, for the longest time, I wanted to be a
hmm,
psychologist. So in volleyball, you always play on a team, right? You can't do anything without three people touching the ball in single play. Maybe you can have two people, but you can't do anything by yourself.
yeah.
So I'm always fascinated by teams and how do people think and how do people work together. So I thought this is what I was going to end up, being a psychologist and then figure out, okay, what do I do from there? Am I a counselor? Do I work in HR or whatever? But psychologist. And then the second thing was journalist. Maybe
Ah,
my curiosity about people, I always thought it would be an interviewer, right? And write great interviews with like whoever, famous people of the world. But here I am in neither of those two.
but you made your way to the US,
It's
got
true.
the volleyball to pay for a lot of that education. Um, how did you end up where you are now, since clearly you're not a psychologist?
Yeah. So when I came to the US, I was interested in entrepreneurship. That's at least my parents were always small business owners. And when you learn about the US and kind of what it's known for, the American dream, right? You can do whatever you want. And starting a business is, compared to Croatia, especially, very, very easy, right? There's not a lot of bureaucracy. So I got into entrepreneurship and thinking about what would I want to start? How do I want to start a business? What are some fun ideas? And then when I went to graduate school, my program, my MBA program had a student-run angel fund. So we were parts of an angel fund that had a funding of $1 million. And every year we would attend angel conferences in the Northwest. So it was in Oregon and Washington, and write checks to a startup that we thought was promising. And I was like, this is really good, but obviously I don't have the money to invest. And I find the running of the business a lot more interesting.
Okay.
So from then on, I always looked at smaller companies to work. So my first job out of school was in sales and consulting sales for an IT company. Um, Small company, I wanted to learn the ins and outs and everything. My second job was running a sales team at a research firm. And then after that, I was like, I want to do product. I want to do something even more entrepreneurial, not managing people, but doing the things.
Yeah.
And when my husband and I moved to Washington, D.C., just for personal reasons, I was looking at new opportunities and I found this thing called HeyTaco and realized it was in DC and I wanted to work in person a little bit more than just fully remote.
Mhm.
And here I am almost 2 years later, working on the HeyTaco product and with the HeyTaco team.
Cool. It's a great intro to our next question, which is we want to give students a chance to really understand, okay, hey, Taco, what is this thing?
Yeah.
If they were smart like me, they spent part of the morning wandering through your website, but on the premise, a lot of them didn't. Um, let's start there before we get into the whole SaaS business model stuff.
Yeah.
Let's start
Totally.
back with, what was the founder trying to do? What do you think of in
Yeah.
terms of mission values? And then how does that feed into the service that you guys offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So you are probably more familiar than I was at this time. Everyone in this class is there's a whole industry and concept of recognition, employee recognition, with a few different levels, peer-to-peer, top-down, right? Management-led recognition. So HeyTalk was a peer-to-peer recognition tool where people on a team get to share recognition with each other in their collaboration channels. So Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Google Chat. And the way they do that is in forms of tacos, literally digital tacos, virtual taco that you have on your iPhone or in Slack, nothing proprietary there. They give a taco to each other, and HeyTaco in the background tracks all of that. So we track who gave a recognition to whom, what did they say, what time of day was it, how many recognition points or tacos did they give them, and things like that. The unique thing about how taco works is that we have a daily taco limit. So every day, people have 5 tacos to give to each other. They're use it or lose it. And that was designed with purpose of scarcity, right? People know that these tacos are expiring, which encourages them to give recognition in the moment when something awesome happens, which also tends to be more authentic. People then accumulate those tacos. We display them on the leaderboard. There's a given leaderboard, a received leaderboard, and then teams often have rewards in their what we call the taco shop, where employees can purchase gift cards or time off or cash and non-cash rewards, depending on what the company decides to do. The company was founded in 2016, and the founder at the time worked for the Motley Fool, which is a fintech company in Alexandria, Virginia, which is just a suburb of DC. And he was a UX designer and developer, had nothing to do with HR, had nothing to do with starting a business, but he built an internal recognition tool for the Motley Fool. Their HR team said, hey, we want to build something, right? A lot of times companies either build it or buy it. That we want to build something. And the HR team had their requirements. It has to be this, it has to be this, it has to be this. So he built it as part of a team, and then they launched it, and no one used it. People actually hated it. And they're like, oh my God, I have to like give my coins away or points away or whatever. And the limit was every month, right? So what would happen is at the end of the month, the HR team would send a reminder to everyone, say, you have to use your coins. I think their token of gratitude was coins. Otherwise, they expire. And then what would naturally happen is everyone would give coins to their friends because I don't know what I did a week ago, let alone Wenshen, right? So I would give your coins to your friends, and it was just not meaningful. And now I'm earning those coins, I'm redeeming them for gift cards. It became expensive. So he was like, this is ridiculous. And Slack was pretty new at the time. I think Slack just celebrated 10-year anniversary. So 2 years old at the time. And he just started playing around with the Slack bots. He was like, let me explore these third-party apps on Slack. How does that work? And HeyTaco was one of the first apps in the Slack marketplace, which helped us a lot with early exposure to people who are starting to use Slack. Launch HeyTaco. Fun fact, which Nancy you brought up, is he used beer emojis at the time. So people would give each other kind of the 2 beers if you see them like emoji, and that would be tracked. And he just did it for the Motley Fool for his dev teams. Like, let's just experiment with this. People loved it. But he decided like, well, beers are kind of not corporate, like they're not professional. Let's do something more professional, like a taco, right?
Mhm.
Because no one hates a taco, everyone likes a taco, and the taco emoji was new, so it was just kind of a spur of the moment thing. Plus, it's food, like food, it's not controversial, and food brings people together. So, Hey Taco was born, it was launched on Slack, and from then on, it has just steadily grown in terms of customer numbers and monthly recurring revenue numbers.
Okay. So to help the students understand, I think you've got your very intro video sort of talks about if you're an employee who is, and your company is using HeyTaco. So walk us through what you might do that during a day when you get your 5 tacos. What can you do with those? How
When
do
you
you
earn
use them?
them,
Yeah,
is that what you mean?
been given your quota of
Yeah,
5
yeah.
virtual tacos. What could you do with them? How do you
Uh,
recognize people?
the opportunities are endless. So first of all, 5 is your daily taco amount. You can give all 5 tacos to one person. You can split them up amongst 5 people. So you would decide. We like to refer as what you're building with HeyTaco, a taco economy, an economy built on gratitude. And we use a lot of econ principles and how we think about it, from scarcity, right, to tacos per capita, right, things like that when we talk to our customers. So oftentimes people, you can just give a taco without a message, which I think is the worst way to give a taco, right? Unless you tell people what you're giving them a taco for, no one feels good about it.
Yeah.
So oftentimes what people will do will say, hey, what is the specific action that I'm giving you a taco for? And it could be anything from thank you for helping me for resolving this technical bug today. I really appreciate your help. Here's a taco. To you just closed the biggest sales deal for the whole company for the month. Here's 5 tacos for you. So with the amount of tacos you give to people, you show how important their act or what they did was to you and to the business.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Nancy?
It does. And the word you used in there, which to me is important, is the gratitude, right? Like there's some, and the message, there's authenticity there. It's not it's the end of the month and I'm going to give all the tacos to my friends.
Exactly. It has to be very specific, right? If it's not specific, it doesn't really mean anything. Just remember when someone tells you thank you, that's not specific, it kind of doesn't feel really good. I had a boss in my last job who said to me once, "Thank you for all that you do." And I know she meant it, but it didn't really feel like anything, right? What is it all that I do? Tell me one thing that I do that you really appreciate. And it could be something as simple as you always show up to our Zoom call on time, right? It doesn't have to be huge.
Yeah.
But when you just do this blanket thank you, it's like, man, you didn't really try. And I can feel that you didn't really try, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of wasted. It's a wasted gratitude.
Well, and the other thing it would do, and I will say this is one of my weaknesses, which is I really am appreciative of what a lot of people do, and I just forget to tell them. And
Yeah.
so at least at the end of the day, I could stop and say, hang on, I forgot to tell this person that. And you've got a nice software, easy to use, go into Teams and send off a taco.
It's definitely a habit, right? So that's the first, when people start using HeyTaco, they have a 30-day free trial, and we have a lot of different nudges during that free trial to encourage people to give, right?
Yeah.
And because it's easy to forget. I forget all the time. We obviously use HeyTaco, and sometimes I have to think, oh, what did this person do? Or, oh, I forgot to give it to them, right? So that's just normal human thing, right?
Yeah.
We forget things. So I would always recommend, like, if you can think of it within 5 seconds, just do it within 5 seconds.
Exactly.
Right? Otherwise, your day is gonna go under you, and you'll just never do it.
Okay. Let's close the loop on the business model piece. And to the students, we're going to start getting into some of the chief revenue stuff and digital recognition benefits, but start throwing those questions into chat. So one question for you, Una, and then I'll go to Wenchen, either for student questions or her own questions. Last piece of a SaaS-based business model. Can you talk a little bit about the pricing model, the revenue model, how that might work?
Yep. So we exclusively make money based on our month-to-month subscription. We don't necessarily have any opt-ins or anything like that afterwards, but HeyTaco offers a 30-day free trial. And after 30 days, people have to opt in into a free trial versus opt out, right? So they have to give us their credit card after 30 days.
Good.
And then after that, it's per user per month. No contracts, people can cancel anytime. And our standard price is $3 per user per month. We have enterprise discounts and annual licensing fees and stuff like that if we work with larger customers, but majority of our customers are on the month-to-month basis because people like the flexibility.
Yep.
One unique thing about HeyTaco is people pay for a user, or they start paying for a user when they give or receive their first taco. So that's when their user account is created. So let's say you have a company of 1,000 people starting to use HeyTaco. And within the first 30 days, you only have 500 people who have engaged. So the buyer, the administrator, will only pay for the 500 users.
Okay.
So a lot of how our revenue fluctuates is on expansion and contraction. So as new employees get hired, they get added to the bill when they start using HeyTaco as the company grows and doubles. And then when people go through layoffs, when they deactivate people's Slack accounts or Teams accounts, that's kind of where our contraction goes. So we kind of grow with the company. You'll never pay for more than the amount of people you have in your collaboration tool, like Teams,
Yep.
But you might pay less depending if the person hasn't engaged.
Yeah, that is cool, actually. Wenchen, questions from you before we move on?
I see one interesting question from the chat. My students, Permita, so they asked how you could ensure the digital recognition is meaningful and personalized for each employee, right, across different roles, different departments, let's say different job functions. Yeah, how could you make people really feel the digital ones is meaningful? I think that's an interesting question.
It's a great question. And everything that HeyTaco, how our philosophy is you can't coerce, you can't mandate, you have to teach and inspire. So a lot of how you ensure that recognition is meaningful is by rituals that managers and leaders of a company deploy within their team to celebrate the meaningful recognition. So you get what you celebrate, right? So a lot of times people will have rituals like reading taco messages as part of their weekly all hands meetings, celebrating the messages that are meaningful and inviting the person who gave the talk and say, hey, tell us more about that. And what that does is sends the message to everyone else on the team. Hey, this is what's valued. It's not just about the quantity of recognition you sent or receive, it's about the quality. And as soon as people start doing that, you always see the meaningfulness of those messages, or at least just, the word character count go up because people know, oh, okay, this is what's celebrated, this was what is valued, so I'm going to do more of that. So it's a lot of teaching and leading, right? A lot of leadership. You can't, it's hard to mandate it, which is it's a losing strategy for something like this.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Maybe Nancy, I would just let you continue. I have some student asking about the job functions. What's your job function? Something like
Okay,
that.
which is a great next question. They must be getting used to how we run these interviews. So yes, Una, you are a chief revenue officer. What's a chief revenue officer do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, that title, I don't really care about titles. We don't really use titles within HeyTaco. We're also very, very small, right? So this is kind of describes what I do to the outside world when I'm trying to bring new business in, right? Or partner with people. But what I do on an everyday basis is divided between our current customers, trying to find new customers, and team, right? Those are kind of the three buckets that I always juggle, right?
Okay.
It's always harder to get a new customer than to retain a current customer. So I spend a lot of time, especially at the end of the year when people reevaluate their budgets and all that stuff, thinking about how do we continue creating value for our customers, whether it's doing webinars or talking to our largest customers, things like that, that would just make me understand what do they want next. And then I feed it to our dev team. I was like, these are some product requirements you should prioritize or whatever. On the getting new customers, it's definitely through trying to find new traction channels, inbound leads that might come in if we're doing demos or doing contract work with some larger customers, like how do you negotiate terms of service or whatever, or partnerships, right? A lot of how HeyTaco gets adopted and how people find about HeyTaco is, let's say you have a gift card provider that's like, well, you should use HeyTaco and the gift card provider together, right? Or here's another tool and we kind of play well with HeyTaco, you should talk to them, right? So those are kind of the three, and what was it? The third one is the team. Yeah, this is where my psychology interest, not background, interest, and comes in. But I like to think about how do we keep the team in a productive mood? How does everyone have clarity around their results and their goals? They know how their work impacts the team. So I always think about what's the kind of general mood of the team for us to achieve what our goals are.
Yeah, good point. And also good point about retention, right? When you're looking at a SaaS-based business, that retention of customers, extending the lifetime, keeping your existing customers happy, really, really important. You don't want to be replacing them all the time.
Exactly. And it's helpful to look at the whole cycle from people, from awareness to acquisition to conversion to retention to the referral with the one person and one lens. Because oftentimes what happens in organizations, the sales team is really excited about closing the lead. Even if it's a wrong lead, then the lead gets passed to customer success. Might be completely different. The customer success is only worried about renewals or whatever. And then you have a lot of people just pursuing their own goals because to performance management, that's what they're rewarded on.
Yeah.
Right. And then the customer has a terrible experience. So I think about how does a customer have a seamless experience from the start to the finish. Even at the finish, when people cancel, we send them a thank you. It's like, thank you for your support. Like, we appreciate you spending 4 years of your life with us, right? It has to be this awesome experience because that's what also brings in more revenue. They'll always remember that feeling, right? So that's kind of like the chief revenue thing is how do we split it up across all those functions and keep it seamless?
Okay. You basically offer them a digital recognition tool. So how do you think of that digital recognition as being similar to or very different from sort of more traditional employee recognition programs?
Are you thinking, Nancy, about traditional employee recognition programs like Employee of the Month and someone's face being put up on the board in the kitchen?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. The digital recognition is it's more frequent, it's more timely, and it's less of a stage, right?
Mm,
People do it every day, even with our competing tools, right? People do it either weekly or monthly, but it's still more persistent than this one person that's chosen by management.
yeah,
So that's one thing. The second thing is also peer-to-peer based.
yeah,
So you have kind of the whoever is the top of the leaderboard, right, or any sort of kind of metric thing. It's a person that the people voted for versus the management looked at their team and said, oh, we should nominate this person. So it's less arbitrary. It's more like people's vote. So those are the two things that the digital recognition, especially peer-to-peer recognition, really kind of solves the job to be done for people. But I also find that a lot of customers, a lot of companies still have the traditional model of like employee of the month, right? There's
yeah,
kind of different, I always think about different levels of recognition. And
yep,
all three are needed to have this established, like grade recognition program within a company.
yeah. And then now that you've got the increased frequency, you've got peer-to-peer and not just, management picking somebody, um, how does that then influence employee engagement? That's something I saw on your website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Employee engagement is obviously, I'm not an expert in employee engagement, but a lot of times when we talk to our customers, which are 80% of them are people leaders, HR and people leaders, they'll just measure the number of times or how do people literally engage with each other, let's say on Slack as an example.
Okay.
Right. So when they send tacos, they can see, wow, all 100 people on our team have been active with this tool this week. Right. So I think it definitely increases people's willingness to say something in company channels. Right.
Yep.
Otherwise, you might kind of just lurk. It's like being, a social media lurker, but not really a poster. With HeyTaco, you kind of have to engage because someone gives you a taco and reciprocity is a real thing. Now you want to reciprocate, even if it's not to that person, you want to give it to someone else.
Right.
So it definitely helps with pulling people in, especially in a remote world where you're behind a screen and it's really easy to disengage.
Yeah. I've got some questions maybe about an example, like what's it take to implement this? But Wenshen, how are we doing in chat? I think you said you might have some more questions from students.
Yeah, I saw one interesting question, somehow related to this effectiveness, right? Or how effective it is related to employee engagement. So one of my students, Majitaba, so they asked like, how could you make sure the fact that people not just giving out tacos for the sake of giving it, right? So
Yeah.
if they have 5 tacos each day, and the tacos might expire each day, and how could you avoid people just like giving out for fear of missing out? Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll address that first. Two things. The first one is what I spoke about before, the leadership encouraging the messages more than the quantity. So again, what you celebrate, what you encourage is what you get. So that's always the first thing. The second thing is in Slack or Microsoft Teams, people use HeyTaco in public channels. So putting it in a public forum where there's accountability from others. If you try, let's say people often worry, what if people just give tacos to their friends? And it's like, well, sure, they might try it, but when there's 500 other people in the same channel, people are going to notice, and the fear of shaming is real. So the public recognition and having accountability from your peers helps drive the more responsible behavior.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. Yeah, the public's like making the rewards public. We talk about that in our class as well. Visibility matters.
Exactly.
Yeah, another related question from my student, basically saying, did you foresee any like downsides of digital recognition? I guess that's a more broad question.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good question. Any downsides of digital recognition? You know, everything is a tool. Like the systems that you put in place and the rituals you put in place make it or break it. So the downside, if not being nurtured properly, if not being taught and inspired people to do the right thing, is that people either just give recognition, even if it's not HeyTaco, they give recognition for no reason, just so they can get the monetary reward. Or it can feel competitive, right? And this is where Adam has done a lot of work on the effects of leaderboards in peer-to-peer recognition. So if you only celebrate, let's say, the receivers, people who are receiving recognition, people can feel like, well, there's just one person who works with 30 people versus I work with 10 people. Of course, they're going to get more tacos. And now you're just discouraged. You don't want to engage in it, right? The second thing is, again, it comes to leadership and how you implement and how you do it is people can feel like it's maybe fake or mandated, right? If it's launched and the message is, we're doing this to do this, but you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do that. And then people are like, well, why are we even bothering with this? So too many rules and controls in place on any digital recognition program can feel like, well, we just took the fun out of it, right? Or even the meaning out of it.
Mhm.
Nancy, I think you had a question about implementation, right? Did I miss that one?
No, I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
Wenchen, any more from students before we?
So far not.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Because actually it's probably a good time to start asking a question around sort of what when you see a really successful implementation of HeyTaco, what have your clients done to avoid some of the downsides you just listed?
Mhm. They have rituals that are unique to their culture that cement gratitude as just how they roll, right? It's just a value that they have. The more you can embed it in, this is how our team says thank you. Oh, by the way, we use HeyTaco, the better. So when people forget that HeyTaco is a separate company, that means that the customer is doing something well, right? They're like, oh, I thought HeyTaco was just an inbred tool. And what I mean by rituals is um, celebrating the top givers or top receivers on the leaderboard, ideally switching those up so that you're not always celebrating the same behavior.
Yeah.
Bringing the recognition messages in some public forum, whether it's the CEO of the company saying, hey, it's our weekly all hands. Let's just read through some taco channel, right? Building out these rituals that cement like, okay, this is just how we roll. For example, we have a startup that's using HeyTaco in Australia, and their developer team every 2 week sprint. At the end of the sprint, they do a retro, and at the end of the retro, they turn on the music and they have 10 minutes, and everyone just gives tacos to each other. And not that they can use HeyTaco throughout the 2 weeks, but this is like, hey, if you forgot someone in the last 2 weeks of the sprint, recognize someone that really helped you. So they have made space for the whole team to go in, and they'll send thousands of tacos in 10 minutes of like, hey, thank you for helping me with this bug and this thing and whatever. And this is just what they do every 2 weeks. And then from then on, they'll look at the receivers and they'll enter them into a raffle to earn certain things, right? So rituals are definitely important. And the second thing is making them fun, right? If you make it corporate and formal, now it becomes forced fun, and no one likes forced fun, right? So it has to, and by fun, I don't mean silly and not meaningful. You can
Yeah.
still do meaningful things, but you can make them fun. So for example, I had this ready so I can show it to you. I went to a customer site here in Washington, D.C., and what they do is they'll reward the top receiver every month. And this last month, a person got a plushie, like a taco plushie. They just got a plushie, and sometimes they'll do trophies for their annual top taco receiver. They'll give them a golden taco. You can get crazy taco trophies on Etsy. And they would, engrave it with the person's name. These things, they don't cost much. You can do them for $20, but they mean a lot to the person, right? They'll have that plushie or that taco for a really long time, reminding them of like, I really felt valued and appreciated by my colleagues at my company.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking as you were talking about the Australian startup, I've worked with some Aussies, and I was thinking actually the beers might work better for them
Yeah,
than
I think you're right.
tacos. But um,
You're right. This is, this is a philosophical discussion on our team,
yes.
but people will often ask about custom emojis, right? We
Mm,
have a cheese company saying we want to send slices of cheese, or a blackbird and say we want to send blackbirds, right? And that's definitely a product question, right? It's like, once you open up that can of worms, it can cannibalize our current sales and stuff
yes.
like that. But we do have the ability to track beers if we really wanted to.
Um, what measures are your clients using? You talked about, they need to renew contracts and those kinds of things. What kinds of measures are they looking at to try and decide first to start, and then second to continue using it?
Yeah, when they start, the reason why they come to HeyTaco is they either don't have a formal recognition program, and in the last engagement survey, their employees said, we don't feel appreciated, right? Or I would like to have more appreciation from my teammates or my manager, or employee engagement. The communication channels are bare. No one's talking to each other. People are not engaging on a team basis in just random chatter, right? They're not even measuring, hey, are people talking about work-related projects? That's kind of a given, right? But are people engaging in social chat or the water cooler conversation? So that's kind of what causes them to come to HeyTaco is those two things. And then when they come to HeyTaco, they'll do pulse surveys all the time, right? With the questions of scale of 1 to 5, I feel appreciated about my team, all that stuff, and just see like, hey, is this correlating with, HeyTaco or not HeyTaco? And they'll look at usually the leaderboard and see who are the people who are receiving the most, who are people that are giving the most. If we have a large team, is everyone on the leaderboard within this week, within this month? So just engagement with HeyTaco and are people actually using it? So with HeyTaco, they can download always all their data and do extra analysis. And we provide them with like a trailing 30-day kind of overall talk was given where admins can see, okay, are we giving, hundreds of tacos a day or like 3 a day? If you have 100 people, 3 a day is bad, right? So
Yeah.
I'll look at like tacos given per day, per week, who are the people giving them? And they'll also look at kind of diversity of tacos. Are you giving to only 3 people on your team? Or are you really spreading and connecting with the rest of the company? And that's also pretty meaningful too. They'll see like people talking to each other just like as another level or layer of engagement.
Okay. Probably more questions I could ask there to follow up, but Wenchen, student questions?
Yeah, I think that somehow maybe follow up on your discussion. So my student Lily, they asked about how you can make the recognition more genuine. Yeah, I like the idea about you're measuring that their real chat, right? So I think, yeah, so they're interested in any changes you can make their recognition like more genuine than just for the sake of doing it, right?
Yeah, it definitely comes from, it comes from the values of the company, the people that you hire, teaching people what's valued. And again, I wish I had a tool answer like, hey, you can delete certain things. But unfortunately, when it comes to humans, a lot of things you're teaching and reinforcing and repeating versus tool tricks. So the rituals help a lot. The leadership team engaging. A lot of times, if the leaders are not sending appreciation, and it's not meaningful, people will realize, well, this doesn't matter, or it doesn't matter to say actually something meaningful. So the involvement of leadership and the management team is crucial in any recognition program being successful because people will follow their lead, right? If you notice, your manager saying this is important, but they don't do it, it's like, well, it can't be that important if you're not doing it, right? So that's super, super important.
Maybe me myself have my own question. So when you talk about the downsides and upsides of recognition, right? Just reminds me of the book Adam Grant. So he's studying social behavior psychologist at Wharton, right? So he has a book Givers and Takers, right?
Yep.
So what the research finding is basically both ends is not optimal, right? If you're giving too much or you're not giving at all, those two ends are not good, right? I'm just curious, like, how could you measure or did you observe any optimal point, right? So like an optimal amount of social recognition actually is the best, not doing too much, not doing too little, right? So is there some kind of like optimal level of digital recognition? Just curious.
That's such a good question, Wenshen. I feel like we need to partner with Adam and Alex on doing more data work on our recognition. Because to be honest, I don't have a number, right, of what the optimal kind of amount received and given, but we that book was definitely an inspiration for how we think about HeyTaco. Everything we do within the tool is focused on the givers, right? Because if you're going to opt on either end, maybe you should opt on the giving end, right? That's at least our philosophy, right? So if you're going to default to something. So we do a lot of things to celebrate the giving so people can unlock different levels. They unlocked avatars that are connected to tacos. There's a lot of gamification, and it's very heavily weighed towards giving. Not completely, but very heavily weighed towards giving, like 2 to 1 giving to receiving. So maybe that's kind of our default kind of state is 2-to-1 ratio of giving and receiving, just how we've designed our formulas within the tool to have these unlocking states for different features.
Yeah, that's an interesting number. You mentioned about gamification, right? So how does that actually, do you mind elaborate a little bit on how gamification actually used in HeyTaco?
Yeah. So we have three layers of gamification. Well, leaderboards are one layer of gamification, right? The unique things we have is individual achievements, so people can kind of level up based on their own performance. Again, levels and taco tars, and you just think people get excited about these. They're little tokens of from Hey Taco to the person saying you unlocked a new level because you just gave 10,000 tacos or whatever. For example, we have a Hey Taco Hall of Fame that we started last year where we celebrate a person amongst our whole customer base, not a company, an individual person who has been climbing the levels and who has given the most tacos, so far in their journey. So we're about to induct our second Hey Taco Hall of Famer into that. Another layer is we have these things called stickers. So it's kind of like in video games when you unlock certain powers. In Hey Taco, a certain power is more tacos to give, right? So you unlock certain stickers that are worth tacos that you can give to people whenever you want. So, and they are worth different amounts of tacos, and depends on like if like a formula is who's given the most tacos in a particular month, who has given to the highest percentage of their teammates. So we reward the diversity, and those are kind of fun things that people can unlock. And then you always have, I guess, the rewards count as gamification, even though it's not necessarily it's a staple in our industry. But the other things are more the fun things that kind of keep people engaged with Hey Taco, and our end users love it. So it's less, we sell less to the HRs. They put their credit card down like for a subscription, but it's the end users loving it that helps the HR decide this is the tool that we want to use.
Well, that's a cool idea. Like good to know that gamification does work.
It does work, but it can't be overly gamified. There's always this balance, right? And the way we balance it is that people can opt out of things, right? They can opt out of certain things. They don't have to do it. They can opt out of Hey Taco. Because if you force them, then you just have, what is it called in the Net Promoter Score?
Yeah.
Detractors. You have a lot of detractors, and those are not good for anything.
Yeah, Nancy, I guess I asked all of the questions so far. Maybe I will just let you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw one at you, Una, and maybe position it as, I'll come back to maybe Lily's question about, making sure we've got genuine or authentic tacos being sent. And I guess maybe I'll confirm one of the messages I'm hearing from you is, Hey Taco's got this really cool digital tool, but it needs to be part of the offline world as well. That you need, um, connections back to the company actually talking about it, and really using it to reinforce the culture. Is that a fair message that I'm sort of hearing from you?
Yeah, I would say so. It definitely needs to bridge both worlds in order to be sticky and in order to change behavior. And I don't mean sticky just from the value of, hey, Taco, stay
Yeah,
with us longer and pay us
yeah,
more, right? It's from the value to the company of we have this culture where we just say thank you as a matter of fact, and it's
yeah,
just reinforced with this. But yes, I think bridging the offline and I guess they're both online if you're working fully remote, but like
yeah,
Hey Taco world and the not Hey Taco world, super, super important.
yeah. One of the things I really liked when I was going through and looking at some of the videos in terms of how Hey Taco works is this idea of using tags. And I don't think you've touched on that yet. And this idea that if you have a strong culture and you're really trying to build behavior around certain sets of core values, that you can actually not just say thank you, but connect it back to building that behavior. Do you want to give
Mhm.
the students an example of how that might work?
Sure. So when you give a taco, you can also include a hashtag, just like in social media, right? Hashtag Taco Bell, hashtag customer first. That is usually connected to a company value. And then we track that hashtag along with the message on a completely separate page within the web application. And then we see who has received the most tacos on a particular hashtag in a particular time frame. So people can filter who has received the most for the value people first in the month of October, right? And then admins and leaders can do extra layers of kind of public recognition of, hey, Nancy has given the most tacos for this particular value. Good job, Nancy. The way we do values is very different than how our competitors do values. And the reason for that is it's people opt in, so you have to write out the value. And so there's no like choose from a drop-down menu.
Okay.
And the reason for that is technical in nature, connected to the user experience and behavior. So I mentioned our founder is a UX designer. So he is a hawk when it comes to terrible user experience. He's like, nope, we're not doing that because it feels terrible. And if it feels terrible and it looks terrible, the subconscious mind, people are not going to do it. So we used to have a way where you can give a taco connected to a value that opened up kind of a whole modal within Slack or Microsoft Teams, right? It kind of opens up a pop-up. You have to select a value, you have to write a message. And what happens when you introduce extra steps is people don't do it, right? Or they do it and then they choose any value for a taco just to bypass that step. And now the leadership is getting skewed data. Someone will say, thank you for grabbing lunch for me today. Hashtag integrity, like that doesn't really connect, right? So we designed it in a way that's completely opt-in. And then people, admins, leaders have to kind of encourage people to say, hey, we use the value this for this, and then we celebrate people. Again, it definitely requires more teaching and more saying, hey, please use hashtags. However, I always relate it to, brands in today's world. Like Taco Bell doesn't mandate someone using their Taco Bell hashtag. You have to inspire people to want to use a hashtag. And sometimes when you get to management, it's just easier to tell people what to do. And a lot of people just don't want to do it, and then they're going to hate it. And that's kind of the terrible, terrible experience for everyone.
Yeah. Conscious of the time, so I'm going to start wrapping us up. One more question, Wenchen, and then I'll see if the students have any others. We'd like to talk about the future.
Yeah.
So what's your vision or expectation for how digital recognition or employee recognition, how do you see that playing out over the next few years? And ultimately, what role can HeyTaco play in making that world a reality?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you sent me that question, and I'm like, I have to think about that. Like, I'm not a predictor, right? Um, the future of digital recognition. Well, as different generations enter the workforce, a recognition that you go to ADP to send to someone is not going to work, right? So it has to be recognition that is in people's workflow that people want to do and not have to do because someone from HR mandated it. So I think a lot of the reason why we see people changing from different tools to HeyTaco and why they come to it is like it's, Gen Zs love it, right? Or people across different cultures love it. So I think it's the focus. I was just at a conference last week and people talked about making work human. And I think part of that is making our tools that we use also human and work for the human versus the other way around, right? It's not about the tool, it's not about the company, it's about what do people actually want to use. How does HeyTaco play into that? Well, as we grow and as any company grows, it's really easy to get distracted by building features that your biggest customers want or building features that the one HR person at this customer want, right? And not staying true to what makes HeyTaco to that like identity of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to just make sure that the product doesn't become sucky, right? That people actually still love it versus feel like, oh, HeyTaco is the product that used to be good. It used to be fun. And then someone started building stuff that no one wants, and now it's not fun anymore. And then another kind of the future of recognition is connecting recognition to rewards in a meaningful way, right? It's not just about get a watch for your 5-year anniversary. There's a lot about, anniversary and milestone recognition, but so how do you reward people in global world, right? They're not next to you, they're in a different country with a reward that's meaningful for them, not, hey, this is what we sent to all 5,000 people on their birthday. Like that just misses the boat completely and falls on deaf ears. So meaningful recognition that touches on all the 5 languages of appreciation, right, across the global workforce that you have to deliver to them in their home. And that's pretty hard.
Sounds like an interesting challenge, though.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, Wenchen, last call for questions from you and or students, and then we'll ask our final question.
All right, so I just got one question here. So the student Ahala, so they're interested to know have you adapted employee recognition system over the years since the company was started? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Originally we were all about recognition and nothing about rewards. We thought rewards can change people's behavior, especially cash rewards, Amazon gift cards, things like that. So initially the tool didn't even have an option for rewards. And through just our work with customers and understanding that you can do rewards in a meaningful way, and that rewards actually create a program that people value, that employees value, we have added rewards in the last few years. And then we're adapting to building custom integrations with a lot of different employee rewards providers. So swag, company stores, snack boxes, whatever, you name it, right? But I think we were keeping recognition as recognition. And it turns out that people really talk about recognition and rewards, and it's kind of one thing. And when it is one thing, it works really well for companies. Now, you can mess it up and you can do it really well, and the balance is there. But that's been kind of the biggest learning for us. Maybe we were kind of not wanting to do it. We definitely were not wanting to do it, especially like gift cards, right? But it turns out like people really value it, and you can do it in a meaningful way. You just have to watch it. Otherwise, it can become very transactional as soon as you add money to something like recognition.
Good point. Although the person you and I talked to a lot about this, Adam Presley, continues to try and convince me gift cards are non-cash rewards. And sorry, I'm an accountant by training. They sound like cash to me.
Yeah, if I have to pay payroll taxes on it, it's cash, right?
There we go. Okay, so a lot of the students on here today are in their last term of an undergraduate program, maybe going on to a master's program, maybe heading out into the real world to work. We always like to ask our guests if there's one piece of advice you'd like to share with the students as they move forward in their lives and career. What would it be? What's the one thing you'd like to leave them with?
Yeah, be proactive. And what I mean by be proactive is sure, do the job that you have been tasked with to the best of your ability, and then look for other ways to create value. Whether it's your colleague is struggling with something, go help them. Whether you see a problem that your boss continues to report, but no one's doing anything about it, be proactive and solve problems before people even know that there are problems. It doesn't just help you advance in your career, but it helps create value for the company. And those things are what help you advance in your career. Plus, it makes work way more fun, right? I remember when I was graduating from my MBA, someone said to me, there's two jobs in the world, one where you're told what to do and one where you decide what you do. And guess one which pays more, right? And the latter is the one. So you always have to find, how do I create value for the business? How do I find problems that are problems that no one's tackling? And how do I just help a colleague like that's struggling? All those are all things to create value and just be proactive. And those things are people who do that are really, really hard to find.
And I'll give you one last chance because I mentioned before we got the students in here that I was taking a quick listen through a podcast you have. So one last pitch for the podcast. If students found this really interesting, where can they go to hear more from you and your HeyTaco founder on amazing
Yeah.
teams?
Yeah, we have an Amazing Teams podcast where we interview usually CEOs and founders of companies of how they've built their teams. And some of them are customers because we have a lot of awesome teams using HeyTaco. So we're like, well, we want to share this knowledge and record that with other people. But Amazing Teams, that's where you can listen to us. Feel free to, connect on LinkedIn or reach out if you have any questions. Or if you ever have any ideas. We love getting feedback from our customers. We love getting ideas from people. So feel free to let me know.
Cool. Well, thank you to the students for joining us today. Thanks, Wenshin, for making all this happen. And Una, thanks very much. Really, really enjoyed learning about HeyTaco and a little bit about your own personal journey. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, William.